Hey, welcome to episode 38 of Enjoy the Journey with Aaron Chambers. I'm so glad that you found my podcast. If you like it, would you share it? Would you subscribe? Give it a thumbs up, give it 5 stars. All those things would be so helpful. I have interesting conversations with interesting people. And today I talked to a former gang member who is now a church planter. It's a fascinating story. And I'm so excited for you to hear from Pastor Gonzalo, Pastor G. It's going to be hopefully a huge blessing to you. I want to encourage you. It's a long conversation. I want to encourage you to listen to it all. It is so rich, so powerful, and true. It's a story of the transformational power of Jesus Christ. So I hope it blesses you, and I hope it brings joy to your journey. All right. Hey, welcome to Enjoy the Journey with Aaron Chambers. And we have a great guest we're going to talk to today. His name is Gonzalo Venegas. And Gonzalo is somebody that I've gotten to know really recently. I'd heard about him. We met for a few minutes as he was getting in a car at a convention in Orlando. And then we had a chance to hang out a couple of weekends ago. And I said, I want to talk to you on my podcast. So Gonzalo, welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here, honestly.
Oh my goodness, it's so good to have you. And I guess now you also go by Pastor G, right?
Yep, Pastor G, and that's an interesting reason why.
Tell me why.
When I started doing prison ministry and like everybody knows. I mean, let's be serious. Let's be honest here. My name is hard to pronounce or to remember. I didn't choose it, obviously, and so like in prison, like they're really big on respect, and so you gotta be careful. And so they were afraid of butchering my name when I came in, and so when I would come in, so instead of saying Gonzalo or Gonzalo or I would tell them just call me Gonzo then, because that's a nickname I've had since I was a kid as well. And they would not call me Gonzo, so they'll just call me Pastor G, Pastor G, Pastor G, and it just stuck from there. Because they couldn't remember what my name was.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, just stuck ever since then.
Okay, so I want to hear your story, but let me go ahead and let people know you're a pastor. You're a pastor. How long have you been a pastor?
Man, since 2016. Since 2016, it's not that long.
Okay. All right. And I want to talk about how you got called to be a pastor, and you're planting a church.
Yes.
Where are you all planting?
In Kissimmee, Florida.
Yeah.
Where all the tourists and the crazy drivers are.
My old stomping grounds, man.
Yes.
Yeah, Kissimmee, know it well. And yeah, so when is your official launch date?
April 11th. So it's already coming up. So launch date is April 11th at Johnson University on the campus. And okay. and we have 2 soft launch services before that, which is March 28 and April 4, which is Palm Sunday and Easter.
Okay. What's the name of your church?
Encounter Christian Church.
Encounter Christian Church. All right. I want to throw up your website, and we'll put that up there so you can so that people can check you guys out, and so people can write you a large check to help you as you get ready to launch, man. Right?
That would be amazing. I would love that. That'd be good.
All right. Well, hey, tell me your story a little bit. It's like, so where were you born? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and I am Mexican American. So yeah, for those wondering, and so I've been blessed with having both my father and mother in my life, but I was born and raised in the hood of Chicago, like just in the ghetto. We lived in Section 8 apartments. Really? Which is government, housing, and it was bad, man. It was bad. And so, but the other issue too was like, a lot of the men in my family were alcoholics, and they were women beaters. And so that was just like the type of upbringing that I had. And so, growing up in a giant family, I come from a very, very big family, just huge family, and so we had celebrations all the time. There was always a birthday party, a quinceañera, a wedding, and all kinds of just, And then I was raised culturally Catholic, and so first communions, confirmations. It seemed like there was a party every single week, and and we would rent halls. That's how big my family was. Just a
Wow.
lot of relatives and cousins and second cousins, and they were all seen like as brothers and sisters, and so we were all really close, tight knit. The problem was again living in a really bad neighborhood, a lot of alcohol, alcohol abuse, substance abuse, and a lot of domestic violence in my family. So that's what I grew up with. My father was abusive, was an abusive man and also an alcoholic, and in my family there was also a continual cycle of like as I explained, violent men in my family, murderers and murder victims in my family, and sadly growing up in that tough neighborhood, I had a lot of cousins that were gang members.
Okay.
And so yeah, so I was a kid, and as I remember, like my childhood and different things like that. My childhood is drastically different than what I remember than other people's childhoods. When I think of my childhood, I remember playing and having fun, but at the same time, being careful not to step on used needles that people
Really?
would use. Yes, and so that was common: crack pipes and needles all over the floor, the ground, and so that was literally what I grew up with, just witnessing those things, being careful with those things, and violence was around us all the time. It was like even you even got conditioned and callous to it, where there would be a shooting or something would happen, which is traumatic, and we would like get frightened for a few moments, step aside, let the police clean it up, all that stuff, and then go back to playing. That was just the routine in life, and that was how I grew up. I hated gangs growing up. My brothers were gang members, my cousins were gang members, and one day my one of my brothers was involved in a fight that turned into a homicide. My brother was just there with his friends, and he was just following them. And if you know anything about law, if you're in a gang, and even if you don't pull the trigger, if somebody is there with you, you're as guilty as they are. And my brother was a minor, was an underage kid, and so it was a very scary time for him. He did not agree with what happened in that moment,
Hmm.
and so but yet he had to do the time, and he was fighting a case, and there was retaliation because of that case, and my family was at risk. We were in danger because of that homicide.
Okay.
And so it was a very scary time for my family. And I had a cousin who was a gang leader, was the leader of that gang that my brother was in, and
Hmm.
he defended my brother. He defended him. He defended his honor on the streets, and my cousin ended up losing his life.
Mm.
And so we, after he lost his life, it was like he was like the star of the family. He was just one that always brought celebration, brought unity. He was a very young kid, but he was a natural born leader.
Mm.
Amazing, amazing, very organized, very structured. Just and it was just amazing, just and who he was and the leadership capacity that he had at such a young age. And he was murdered. And for refusing to give up information on where my family was hiding, because the people wanted to hurt my family
Yeah.
because they couldn't get to my brother as he was in jail because of that case. And when that happened, it destroyed our family. Our family got divided after that, and many of our family members were really upset with us. They blamed because of my brother's situation that happened, and so we were we were we were basically it was like basically saying shunned. We had to run, we had to hide, move from town to town to hide from the gang that was looking for us. And there was and in that same time there was a war among them,
Okay.
and so there was a lot of murders, a lot of violence, and at the age of 12 they found out where we lived, and they nearly murdered my family. They were going to start with murdering me coming home from school. I was in sixth grade,
Okay.
and they were, but thank God that one of the people that they were forcing to be part of those murders was afraid, and he went to the federal government to give the information, and so we were spared. So I
Well,
thank
let me
God for
stop for a
that.
second. So
Yeah,
you were 12 years old
yeah,
and all this had already happened. Okay, before we get into the next part of your story or the rest of your story, let me ask you a question.
which is crazy.
Yeah. So let me, thinking about your life before 12 years old, what is something God led you through, led you to, something God did in your life before 12 years old that has better equipped you to be a pastor? Is there anything that you can think of like, oh my goodness, I was young? Because I know your story, it's going to take more twists and turns.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like that early stage when you were in abusive situation, you were scared, you had a really rough childhood. Is thinking about because what people are going to hear from you is you're not a victim,
Yeah.
you're a victor, and God's led you, He's leading you, and He has led you to great victory in your life. And the story is amazing in regards to what we're going to hear. I just know bits and pieces of it, but is there anything that God did led you through before 12 years old that you think, you know what, like I learned that at such a young age, and it's helped me to be a better pastor or even a better husband and a father? I don't know.
No, just when I was little, I despised gangs. I hated gangs. I hated the violence, and I remember in school I learned about this guy named Martin Luther King, and I remember just having to we had to choose somebody, somebody that made an impact in our nation, and I chose him, and that was the person I chose to do a project in him in class, and just learning that he was a pastor. I didn't grow up Christian. I didn't grow up in any way. I grew up culturally Catholic, and that's a big huge difference. But studying and learning about him, and even reading stuff on him and some of his sermons and stuff like that, it really inspired me and changed me, and it really gave me hope for something greater, and to be part of that change too, to bringing about change. And didn't know how, because I was just a kid, but it really, I never forgot him and what he did, and even some of the messages and verses from his sermons were like dear to my heart and to my head and to my mind. And so that was one of the things that I remembered growing up at that age, was always remember that stuff.
Define culturally Catholic as because that may be a term that's new to some of our listeners.
Yeah. And so culturally Catholic is basically just like, you're Catholic because, like with me, I'm of Mexican descent. And so one of the things that we do is, back in the 90s, we wore this rolling hard shirts, these shirts that had lowrider pictures on it, had Aztec Indians on it and everything, and it looked so cool. And that was like the Mexican thing to do back in the 90s. That was a cool thing. And so we did that, and also have Virgin Mary shirts everywhere and different things. So culturally Catholic for us was just really, that's just something that my family did, and they do it. We don't know why we do it, but we just do it because that's the thing that's been passed down in our culture. And so that's literally culturally Catholic is what I mean with that. That there was no relationship, there was not any devotion or surrender to it. It was just, this is part of my culture. I don't know why, but we're supposed to pray to the Virgin Mary. We have our Virgin Mary prayers and these different things. Don't know why, but we do it. So that's what we meant by culturally Catholic, and even with Mexican Catholicism, it's a hybrid between Catholicism and some other saint worshiping weird stuff. That it was just a mixed thing that we did, and we did a bunch of things that we didn't know why we did it, but we did it. And so
Okay, all right, that's fascinating. So your first encounters with God, it was a very surface, very superficial.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Do you remember thinking about God at all during that
Yeah.
time in your life?
There was never. I always believed in God, even though we were culturally Catholic and all that stuff. There was never any doubt if I believed in Him or not. I always did, and I just didn't know much about Him. Like, I always had the yearning, the wanting, and I always tell myself, "I'm sorry, God, for this," or "I'm sorry." I would have conversations with God all the time, but didn't know anything about a relationship with Him or anything like that. I just knew the communication. That was just something that I did. It was just weird. It was just something natural for me that I did. I would have conversations with God, and even but in the church we rarely went, and when we went, I didn't learn anything. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's a really, um, but that's an important aspect of prayer. Even in your situation, even in your um, lack of having a relationship with God, just that's how prayer starts. If anybody's listening, it just starts as just having a conversation with God. Just uh, just start talking.
And now that you say that too, like it makes me think even when it did spice up, when it did get bad, on the aspect of like when these people were about to hurt us, and when we found out that they were gonna, there was an attempt on our lives, and my mom started praying. She would pray every night, and she would every night she would have us kneel down on the side of the bed, and we would pray. She would do her rosary and different stuff, and then but then at times she would be so tired of doing the rosary that she would just break down and cry in front of
Mm,
us, and she would just start like, with Catholics, usually we just did like this is what we recited. We recite, recite, recite. And that's what we did in Spanish. We would kneel down with her and we would do it. But there was times where I'm trying to get emotional or cry, but there was times that she was so tired of reciting, even though she had those memorized, that she would just cry to him and talk to
mm,
God. And I remember those times where like those were the only times, because my mom was a domestic violence victim, and those were the only times that she would actually show any kind of emotion to us, as far as like she would hug me, touch me, and so those were the only intimate times we ever had, really, and it was during those spiritual times. And so yeah.
oh, man, so uh, your story is already is a story of God, you know, making beautiful things out of hardships and pain. So 12 years old, your family. We can pick up your story again. You're 12 years old. Your family. The gang is threatening to kill your whole family.
Yeah,
And
they're planning on killing my family. What they were planning on doing is, they were planning on catching me walking home from school,
hmm
and they were gonna take me, kidnap me, take me to their townhome that they had, and they would take me to the basement, kill me, and then take my keys, and then go murder my family later that day. And so, and now, I was about 12,
so
and I was.
one of their members went to the federal government.
Yeah, he went to the federal government, and yeah, and so he was afraid, he was worried, but also I think he wanted a deal as well with them to bargain with the feds about other stuff. And so yeah, so he told them everything. And so the day that it was going to happen, the feds came to pull. They called my teacher, and they called my teacher to the office, and then she came and pulled me out of the classroom. And when we were standing in the hallway, she just broke down crying, and she was asking me what's going on, and like asking me like if I knew what's going on. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, and she's like, what was like, she's like, is your family in danger? What's going on? And then I started crying, and I started telling her about why we were moving from town to town, but we weren't able to tell nobody, and we were always told to keep it secret. And she was crying, and that is another interesting one, that since you bring that up too. She was a Christian, and
Mm.
she prayed for me in the hallway crying, and she prayed for me, and I just kept crying and weeping. And I remember I was crying so hard I had a hard time breathing. And she just prayed for me. She kept hugging me, and and yeah, so I'm trying not to cry, but yeah, she hugged me, and she told me that the next thing that was about to happen was going to be difficult, and but that they were good people wanting to protect me. And so they walked me into the office, and that was the last time I saw her. And there were some feds that were there in the office, and
hmm
they talked to me. They asked me some questions, and I stayed in the office with the principal and the feds, and while they also went and raided the other people's houses, their house, their duplex, and they can make sure that my family was safe.
Did you not go back to that school?
No,
So you
after
lived like
that, after that we relocated. That's when we moved to Michigan.
so you never like when you said you never saw her again. I thought you were talking about that day. Like you never saw her again.
I always wanted to, but I didn't know her name, and I know she was single in that moment, so she
hmm
wasn't married. So I know she has a different name now, and a
Yeah.
different school.
So hindsight, I mean, she did the Lord's work for you. She was, whether she was an angel or not, she acted like a messenger of God, right?
Yeah.
And she hugged you because you were saying earlier, like you wanted to be hugged as a kid, and
Yeah.
and that is amazing that in that moment she became that safe that you felt comfortable crying in front of her. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a great reminder of how we can be a blessing without our knowledge, and how God sometimes will send people our way who do the work of angels, whether they're angels or not.
Mhm.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you guys moved to Chicago then after that?
No, we moved away from we moved away from there. We moved to Michigan. So
Michigan.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Okay.
so yeah.
So knowing your story, like I said, I don't know your whole story. I'm hearing most of this for the first time. I knew like 2% of it. Um, how do you end up in a gang?
So
Dude, like I'm
this is the
thinking,
next part. This is the next part. Yeah.
yeah.
So we moved to West Michigan, and when we moved there, man, when we got there, it was just devastating for my family. I mean, like we couldn't have contact with our family, we couldn't have contact with our old friends. And if you know anything, like family is everything, especially to everybody, right? To anybody, but especially to like Mexicans that are like so into meeting weekly, continually talking all the time. And that was just our social life, was family and parties and gatherings, and all of a sudden you go from that to nothing no more, not even conversations on the phone. And we were on our own, and it was just super scary, super devastating. We were still mourning the murder of my cousin. More people got murdered, more people murdered people. It was just this horrible situation that was going on. And then the few people that my mother did talk to, family that she trusted, they would keep relaying messages to her. Hey, they're still looking for you guys. Hey. And I would hear this conversation in our house, and it was always like depression and stress and fear. And then going from sixth grade, going into middle school, it's always so awkward. Middle school is just the weirdest place in the world, right? And so you're already going from elementary to middle school. It's already scary as it is, but then now you add that you're moving to another state. So you're in a new school, new states, and in a different culture, because it's not urban no more. Now you're talking about suburbs, and with urban culture, and they're mixed in, but not as many. So it was just different. And then so I got in there, and then the whole time my mother and my family would tell me, "Don't tell them where we came from. Don't tell them what happened to us." And so it was like I just didn't even talk to people, because I was like, what lie am I going to come up with, and how do I keep that lie? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I was a really quiet kid in middle school. I didn't talk much at all, and that made me a target for bullies, especially for Hispanics that would come, and gangs that would try to recruit me. I had a built-in bitterness and hatred for gangs.
Hmm.
And so when they would try to be my friend, to try to recruit me, to try to help me with bullies, I would respond to them with a really horrible attitude, just to get away from me. And they would respond back with violence, and I started fighting gangs by myself, in middle school. And that's when I found out about my violent side, where I never lost a fight when I was in middle school. And because I didn't know this at the time, but till now as an adult, I was a traumatized kid.
Hmm.
I had severe PTSD and all these different things. And so when I had a regular fist fight with a kid, to me, in my head, it was life and death. And so everything slowed down to me, and I went super violent and super aggressive. And that was that. And when I did that in middle school, it actually got the attention more of other gangs. And so that was, and there was a small gang that was that wasn't trying to recruit me. They were just trying to be my friend, because they were like the bad news bears. They were like the smallest gang there. They weren't. Nobody wanted to be part of that gang.
Yeah.
And the other gang was the rival gang of theirs was the same type of gang that hurt my family. And so I just put the one, two and two together, and I say, you know what? I need to join my family. I need to join this gang. I felt like to protect my family because during this time they were still looking for us, and so I felt the need to join a gang, and so I joined this small gang, and immediately I just had a because I still had that built-in hatred for that rival gang, and I started doing violence to them. I started doing crimes immediately, just as soon as I was recruited in, and
How do you
I
join a gang?
huh?
How do you join a gang?
So basically, they took me around. They try to be your friend. They woo you in first, right? They give you the whole false idea of it's a family, we're homies, we're friends, all this stuff, and it's actually a lot more romantic than it really sounds. You know, like they woo you in truly. It feels like a brotherhood, a pact, and they take you around, and then all of a sudden they'll end up in a fight or something will happen and you're there, and so you're having to defend them or something, and so like that's how it happens. It's just one thing leads to another, and before you know it, you're extremely wrapped up with them.
Hmm.
And what happens is when they start to invite you and say, yo, like if you're gonna keep hanging out with us, you might as well be in. You can't just be tagging along. And and that's literally, and then they invite you. They say, hey, do you want to join? And I joined.
So you join, like that means, so you're officially in when you start like wearing certain colors, or
They go through different ceremonies. Different gangs have different ceremonies. Mine was they beat you up. They beat you for I think it was 13 seconds, and you can just fall to the ground. They'll stop the timer, and they'll start it back until you get up. So they want you to fight back, and they will beat you down for 13 seconds. At least the gang I was joining,
yeah.
and yeah, and so think about 13 seconds, not a lot, but so you start thinking, imagine somebody swinging at you repeatedly. That takes
Hmm.
just a second or two to get
Yep.
repeatedly punched. And then when you're talking about more than one person,
Yeah.
it's really bad. And so so that's what happens. And so like when the night came that they were gonna initiate me into the gang, I rejected the members that were gonna jump me in. They call it jump in.
Yeah.
I rejected them, and I said I want the leaders, the big guys to jump me in.
Wow.
And they actually took offense to that, and so but they granted my wish, and they beat me up, and I fought back every second. I never lay down, and one of them picked me up and slammed me on top of the hood of a car, knocked the air out of me. And
Wow.
they beat me pretty bad, but that I earned their respect. I guess I wasn't trying to. I was just an angry, damaged kid, you know.
Hmm.
And I earned their respect, and right after that, I was wearing my colors, you know, my bandana. I changed how I looked, and and I started fighting, just fighting continually, and that was what I did.
Mm.
And I felt safe. I don't know why. I felt safer when I fought. I just when I hurt my rival, I felt safer. It was the weirdest thing.
Did your parents know you were in a gang?
They took them a while because I always because of watching my cousins and my brothers. They were what you would call OG type of gang members. They were from a time that doesn't really exist no more. They were the type where they didn't act a foolish way at home. They didn't wear the colors. They didn't dress baggy or nothing. They didn't do none of that stuff at home. There was an aspect of respect and honor for your parents. It was when they left, they would change or they would do something. And so it was different than what it was in the 2000s, where they were acting like that all the time on social media and school.
Hmm.
It was different. It was more back then. It was different. It was where we keep that on the block, on the streets, and that's it. And we don't take that to school or to home. Yeah, those times have changed dramatically, of course. And so I behaved that same way. I didn't do that. So it took them a while to catch on.
So once you're in, what's it like? So it's violence and like, did the family aspects like did it stick that they had your back, or was it more just kind of like surviving as a group, or everybody kind of looking out for themselves? Talk a little bit about that.
they were just trying to survive because they were the small timers at first. They were the small timers, so they were just trying to survive, man. And but when that came in, they felt safe around me, because they knew that I was like, all it took was just one little spark, and I was in.
Okay.
And 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 this is, again, it's not a bragging and nowhere nothing, but just, it was just one of those things where I didn't lose my fights, and I was always very calculating. Before I ran into something, I did something, I calculated. And so it was just, and so they just like stuck to me in school and different things as we fought and we battled. And but that also I gained reputation in the gang from that. And I wasn't trying to, but it was naturally just happening, and that also caused more jealousy from some of the other gang members. And that's what caused some inner fights. Yeah, it's just a lot of infighting within the gang. I Through the infighting, I ended up taking over the gang.
You took over the gang. How old were
Uh,
you when you took over the gang?
Man, I don't even remember. Probably about 18, 19, and the
Okay.
guys that were way older. Yeah.
Okay. And so what is like, so obviously that's a position of power and authority.
Yeah. And so
What
there
the
was a
future
lot of
look like?
violence.
So what did the future look like to you right at that point? Like when you take over a gang at 18, I'm like, what is, are you even thinking about the future, or are you just thinking about surviving the next short
I
period of
actually
time?
wanted out of the gang. I really did. But I had one of these gang members in the gang that were accusing me of supposedly hanging out with rivals, with the same gang that I hated because of the damage that was done to my family. He was
Mhm.
accusing me supposedly of being secretly with it. He was just jealous.
Yeah.
And I could have left the gang. I remember one of the main guy in that time was just like, you know what, I'll let you walk right now, leave the gang and just do it. So I had a chance. I wanted to leave the gang before that. And but I was just so broken, man, so angry, so bitter within me, that I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna walk away. I'm gonna make that one that is accusing, I'm gonna make him pay. I'm gonna show everybody that he's gonna pay, and I'm gonna take this thing over, and I'm gonna make some changes. And so I had some friends and connections in prison, and so I sent some letters with some real leaders up there, and I got their approval. And once I got their approval, I at the meeting, they thought they were going to actually that current leader in that time and the guy that was accusing me, they thought that I was going to walk in or to get a what they called a violation, basically where I would get a beat for breaking rules. But really, I had calculated the whole thing, and they were actually the ones that were set up. They had lost the gang before the meeting started, and so because I already had meetings and things put in place before then. And it was a very violent meeting for them, and and I took over. And by that time, it was just I was just so bloodthirsty, so angry. And then the one that was accusing me was the one that I originally got in. The reason for he was a really closest friend. And so yeah, and so there was just one of those things where I was afraid in the way of what happened in Chicago, and I was just like, you know what, I can't let that happen again. So I might as well be the one on top of this. And by that time, I just didn't care no more. It was just downhill after that.
Okay, so let's talk. Yeah, talk about where it goes from there. And by the way, I'm thinking I cannot wait to like talk about you being a pastor, because like all of this experience, like leadership and like yeah, it's just to be leading a gang
Yeah.
is is I'm just want to ask, is it a lot like leading a staff, or is it a church staff or not?
No, it's
Without
not.
the violence.
It's actually harder to lead staff in the church.
Why is it harder to lead
You
staff?
can't force people to do what you want. So
Oh, that's awesome.
but
That's
you gotta
brilliant.
actually be, you gotta. I don't know. I just it's one of those things where it's just like you gotta be loving, and you gotta be kind, and you gotta be organized and structured. And I mean, you have to do that stuff with the gang as well to a certain extent. But yeah. So with that, it's like yeah. So there's a big difference when it comes to that. But it can be harder in the church as well.
Mhm.
With the gang life, I remember that even when there was differences after I took over, there was differences. There was people that wanted to try coups, and different things like that. but I would sit down with them and just conversate and delegate and come into agreements and different things. In the church at times, man, people get cutthroat. They slander, they gossip, they destroy you, man. They try to destroy you. So I've seen that ugly side in the church too, where I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, this is worth this right now is worth the entire conversation. For every,
Yeah,
I just think every pastor who's watching this right now is thinking, I'm not crazy. It is bad.
it
It does
is, man. Like in
feels
the gang,
bad.
we had sit downs and we talked and we reasoned at times. Of course, like I'm not trying to say it was better or nothing like that,
Yeah, of
but
course, of
I
course.
mean, there was a lot of times where we reasoned, and there's situations and things I've seen in church. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was said, that happened. Like, oh man. And
Is there a
so,
loyalty in the gangs that, I mean, I know it's fear-based, but is
mhm,
there a loyalty in the gangs that supersedes some of the loyalty you've experienced in the body of Christ? Or no? I mean, I'm just
yeah,
thinking about,
yeah,
yeah,
there was some extreme loyalty there. There was some extreme loyalty, and it wasn't just fear based.
it
Some were
wasn't.
also, huh?
It wasn't.
No, no. Some were, and others were. Others were sold for it. They're culturally, they eat and breathe it. I was one of them. I became one of them. I culturally eat and breathe everything. I memorized the things that I needed to learn, the laws, the rules, the things that we have to do, how we communicated, what we didn't, and I had I had a pecking order, and they had to follow the rules, and so it was a lot of order, it was a lot of structure and a lot of planning and fundraising and different things, and so yeah, it's just the weird weirdest thing.
It's weird how God, even then, was you can see God working to prepare you for
Yeah.
your calling. And it's so fascinating. Okay, so you're 18. Where's your story go from there?
So then yeah, so like
What year is this, by the way?
what
What year is this? Like, so when you're 18?
2004, I think it is
Okay. All right.
2004. And so yeah, 2004, I'm 18 years old, and I'm taking leadership. The gang explodes, it grows, and I went from being a leader of one neighborhood to all of a sudden I had three cities now that we were running, three different areas, and in each of those areas I set leaders in a individual pecking order, but I put a main leader that was I knew was going to be loyal to me, and that would answer to me as we sat together at a table. We would call that the table.
Mm-hmm.
And in that we still honored the older ones from prison and different things. We kept them updated and different things. So we honored that. So we kept that unity type aspect. And so that was it expanded greatly in that gang life. And in that same process, I meet my girlfriend who's my wife currently, of course. And so she was my girlfriend, and we had two daughters. They were born in 2006 and 2007, and now they're teens. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah, so like so they were and but they even though I loved my girlfriend, she was the girlfriend at the time, and I love my daughters. I kind of they were second to my gang. I didn't bring that stuff into the home. I didn't bring none of that stuff to the house. But my wife knows. She'll tell you that I acted different inside the house than I did out in the streets. But they were always second to my gang, to my network.
Mm.
And
Well,
uh, and as that happened, the gang grew. We and the violence grew as well. There was we went from fights to all of a sudden now there's shootings, there's stabbings, there's fire bombings, attempted murders, like all this stuff, homicides. And so this the violence just exploded, and it was against again that rival gang that was once that hurt my family, and they were always the biggest, and all of a sudden now we were their biggest threat and their biggest danger, and there were shootings left and right. And so, well, my and one of my daughters, my because I had two at the time, the youngest one was she's special needs, and so she has Louis Dietz syndrome, and so it's a connective tissue disorder, and so this date she's had over 30 surgeries. We've nearly lost her three times.
Wow.
So keep in mind, I'm leading the gang, and I have a special needs daughter, um, and I'm still conducting these meetings, these different things. I had a 9 to 5 job. I had a factory job. It was a well-paying job, and
Really?
yeah, so I had my job where I had honest money. On
Yeah.
top of that, I was also a rapper and a producer. I was doing all these kinds of things in the side. It was just madness, man. And but it was all structured though. Yeah, I had my music business with my friends, and we had a studio. We had a house with a studio in it, a professional studio. We did shows and different things. And so yeah, I was rapping, producing, and I had my 9 to 5, and I had my gang and my family. So
Wait a
imagine
second.
that.
Let me pause for a second because I am the whole gang thing is
Yeah.
so fascinating to me because it's I have no knowledge about gangs other than what I've seen in movies and TV. So like, what is the purpose of a gang? Do you make money? Is it to make money? Is it to just to fight? Is it to like what
Well,
family?
number one, the main attraction, the biggest thing is family. Is like you got to keep in mind a lot of the people that join are people that don't have a good household at times. Don't have that father figure in the house, or don't have, or maybe kids that are not have are bullied in school or different things, and so they join these gangs, and so because they find, and there is a friendliness, there is a family aspect to it, apart from the violence and all that stuff. And I was just the violent side of it, because there are gang members that join and they're just like the friendly ones, the party ones, and different things like that. And so, and it's kind of like with a biker, you have your biker gang, and then you have your one percenters, and your one percenters are your violent and drug dealers and these, mobster type people. And so I was basically that one percenter type
Okay.
in the gang, and so I was the extreme side of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
And so, but yeah, but as you are part of that one percenter or that group, that extreme side, you are making money for the gang. You are setting up businesses. You are doing different things and expanding and finding ways to launder it. And it's just this whole this whole system of thing that you do. So you can keep the gang growing, and the artillery growing as well, and the territory expanding, and your enemies diminishing. So.
So the goal is just to wherever you are to take over.
Yeah, it was literally like, it's basically like a monopoly. It's just playing the monopoly game, and so you take
Hmm.
over certain property territories and
Hmm.
different things, and you set up businesses in those properties, and you tax people, and it's its own little subculture underworld.
So you would people pay you for protection?
Yeah, we definitely asked it. We got it. We definitely got it. Businesses, people, things like that of that nature. Just you tax them.
Hmm.
Even drug dealers that weren't in a gang or anything, they would turn around and pay us taxes for being in our territory.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Okay. So now you're running the biggest gang in that area of Michigan.
yeah,
Okay. And what happens? So what happens next?
we went to war with that gang again, that rival gang I told you about, and I had a rule where we were to hold ourselves differently than all the other gangs. So we didn't do. I had an extreme. It was a very extreme rule. It didn't last. It was a rule that was broken after I left. But I had a rule where we wouldn't do petty crimes no more, and there was no more carjackings, no more burglaries, no more none of that stuff, no more graffiti, no more none of that. I said we're gonna focus either on this kind of businesses that we're gonna do, and clean businesses as well. But we're not gonna post up. We're not gonna do graffiti. We're not gonna do those things because we're going to war. We're gonna take these guys out, take their territory, and then we're going to expand. And we need to be healthy in order to expand. And so violence picked up, man. And again, the shootings, the stabbings, the fire bombings, they got really bad. It's just and during that time, the because we weren't putting graffiti out there, I had extreme rules of shutting down, of being quiet, private. They couldn't catch us. They didn't know who it was for the longest time who was doing these crimes. So they started using informants that were, and so the feds got involved, And so they finally set me up to arrest me, to take me down.
Okay. How old were you when you got arrested?
I don't even remember. This was a case that lasted for many years. So we fought
Okay.
it. It was a state case, and then it went federal. But they shut down a whole highway. I was leaving my house. This was December 3 is what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And we were leaving my house. I was gonna go to the studio to go record a song, and and they shut down the whole highway. Yeah, and so to
Wow.
basic and when I got on the highway, I knew. I was like, oh man. And all of a sudden I see the patrol lights behind, and even coming my way, because I was on the highway, they're coming my direction. And so yeah, I knew it was over there. So I got out, they put me on the snow, and they handcuffed me. And I went to jail, and I fought my case for years there. And
For how, how,
so
how long, how long were you in jail?
I kept bonding out. They kept trying to hold me in because they had informants and people within my gang, and which they knew that I would know. They knew they were with me. They were dealing with a different breed, and so they kept trying to keep me inside. But they were trying to also follow the law by keeping me in, and
Mm-hmm.
so I kept bonding out because I had finances and
Mm-hmm.
people to pay it up for me, and so I kept coming in and out, in and out. They would give me a new charge, and I would bond out, and then they give me another charge, and I'd bond out. And so, these weren't more crimes that I was doing. They were just adding to the ones in the past.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I fought my state case, and then it went federal. When it went federal, it's usually worse, but in my case, it was actually a good thing because um, I had pretty much a clean record. I had a squeaky clean record, and so that's what saved me in the federal government. If I would have had one felony, I was looking at 25 to life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I fought my case, and they offered me many plea deals. I finally took a plea deal and accepted 37 months in federal prison.
Okay.
And so I went to federal prison. The federal government has a rule where you can't be less than 600 miles from the nearest border of your state. And so they send you randomly. They just randomly selected through like a lottery that they do, and I got sent to Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah, so when I go to federal prison, it's one of those things where, how people say usually that you graduate into the big leagues. Especially for some gangs or some people connected to the underworld. Like the type of gang that I was involved in, it's connected to the Mexican mafia. It's and so that's a very big gang. That's a very big connected network. And so when you go in there, you may be the boss or you may be the leader in your neighborhood, but when you go to prison, you work under their rules, if that makes sense. And so people click up in prison. They're all separated by different groups, and you operate by the rules. You operate by their guidelines, and you learn their do's and their don'ts, and that's how you coexist in the prison system, that is segregated by race, by gangs, by different stuff like that. And so that was me going from the street life straight into the prison world.
Okay. So in the prison world, like, how do you find your place? Like, when you come in there, because we see these movies and
Yeah.
just it seems obviously it's a nightmare, but how did you adjust, and like what are some of the things you had to do to adjust to the inside?
That is a very good question, man. And, like when I see movies, and I see the actors, the thug actors, or the gang actors, and also even in the prison, I cringe all the time because most of the time they do such a horrible, cheesy, corny job. And
Hmm.
imagine if the corny, horrible, cheesy job in those movies is still scary, right? It's still intimidating to see. Imagine how much more it is in the real life when there's no actors. And so yeah, man. And so going into prison, you literally you have to learn how to communicate. And that is the weirdest thing. And so you have to learn how to communicate. You learn, and the prison system is a whole pecking order. There's a pecking order to the prison system, whether people admit it or not. You can be part of a gang that there's no pecking order or something like that. You can be part of a group and just do your time and stay out of trouble. But even then, even those that don't play by the pecking order rules, they have to abide by those that are in the pecking order that are stronger, if that makes sense. And so you have to learn how to navigate the prison system because there's an economy in the prison system. There's people bartering and selling and like when I was in prison, food stamps were, I mean, not food stamps, mailing stamps were considered money. That was currency. And
Wow.
it was like the money, and that's how you purchase things. There was buying and selling and trading and stuff like that. And so there was deals being made and money being put into people's accounts, into families' accounts. And so there's a whole economy, there's a whole culture in there. And so you have to learn how you fit in and how do you navigate through that. And also you have to learn how to learn what to say and what not to say. Learn when it's speaking too much and when it's not speaking enough. Learn how to stand your ground without starting trouble. In prison, there is what is known as crash dummies. We call them crash dummies. Sometimes these were young people or even older people that went to prison and they got into fight after fight and trouble into trouble. And you learn to read them to see where they fit in the environment of everything, and you stayed away from them because they caused trouble wherever they went. And so it's like they say, misery loves company, right? And so you learn who you can trust, and you usually still don't trust anybody because a lot of times, even when people want to rob you or maybe not even rob you, but maybe hurt you, or put a hit on you, a lot of times it's your friends that do it.
Hmm.
And not that they want to do it, but they're asked or they're forced to do it. And so you learn who to trust, who not to trust, and and so how to operate. It's a very complex environment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you ever feel safe?
Never.
How
I
do you live
mean,
with that? How do you live with that level of anxiety, stress? Like how does that take the toll on inmates? And how did it take its toll on you?
man, it took a heavy toll. I mean, it's taken a heavy toll because a lot of times you still have you end up with PTSD and at times and I'll be honest, man. Like you know, there's times where like even when I would sleep when I got released from prison, and I'm not there yet, but we're gonna talk about that later. But even when I got released, there was times where the way I slept, I had to have my back against the wall. I had to sleep a certain way, and I was a light sleeper, at that time, fresh out of prison. Now I'm a heavy sleeper, but it takes time to get through those things, man. And like you're always watching your environment, you watch your peripherals, and like I learned to listen even when I'm not listening, to look even when I'm not seeing something indirectly. So I learned to pay attention to that. You learn movements, you learn vocabulary and even hand movements and the movements of groups. It's so weird. You learn because sometimes riots were planned by a gang, but it's not like they put a bulletin board and say, hey, just so you know, we're gonna riot and we're gonna surprise attack this other gang, so just be ready. And so it didn't always leak. Sometimes it did, and you would find out. But
Mhm.
other times, man, like there you had to pay attention. And there was even guards in prison that sometimes they learn to read that stuff and they're paying attention for different signs. And when they did, they called in guards, they called in more people. So even when you can relax, even when you're playing basketball, even when you're playing sports, even when you're laughing, you're still not relaxed.
Mhm.
It's madness, man. Like even when I'm hanging out, I'm playing solitary, I'm playing spades, I'm playing these different games, right? I'm playing handball, which I used to love playing there. And but you still don't relax, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
And so it's always tense. And they call this. There you go. This is what I'm gonna tell you. They called it for us, the cholos, the gamers. They call it is staying suited and booted. And
Suited and
so
booted.
you can't relax when you're always suited and booted. Even in the shower, you were supposed to be carrying your boots into the shower. You had shower boots that you tied and you had them tight and you showered with your boots on. And it was the weirdest thing, but it was always militant, always ready to go at a moment's notice. And sometimes you never know, you could be attacked in the shower.
Hmm.
And so again, So you don't always relax. Of course, there were some people that were lifers that weren't getting into trouble. They're considered OGs, older people. Sometimes they were able to relax and watch TV all day and different things like that. So yeah, so but truly, I don't think you ever relax.
So when it comes to relationships in prison, friendships, what's the basis for friendships? And what did you like? Did you develop like can you, is it possible to develop really true friendship in with guys in prison?
There is, man. So I'm not gonna sit there and say no, there isn't. There is. You can always, you can develop, great relationships and stuff like that. But to be honest, I mean, man, it's I don't I I I don't see like the yeah, I don't see like the need for it. If you really are gonna change your
Okay.
life and different things like that, not everybody in there is gonna change their lives. Some people, that's for a lot of people in there, that's all they know. They just know they know that lifestyle. And so if you're trying to get out of it, sometimes you need a change of scenery. But also it says you can take somebody out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of them.
Okay.
And so sometimes you can find certain people that maybe you can build relationships. And I have some people from prison that I still have a relationship with. I really do. And so yes, it is possible. But it's not likely, man. I mean, in the bigger sense, because I know of a lot of people that were in prison with me that have passed away, have been murdered, different reasons, or tried to murder people, are back in prison doing a long time. And so all these kind of crazy things. So imagine you're sitting there trying to make friends on the long term. It's probably not encourage. I would encourage such thing.
So listening to you, Pastor G, tell this story about how you like relationships, how they worked, and how you really just were kind of on guard all the time. Like, how did that impact your life? How did you not become darker and more cynical and like, because you're a pastor now? Like, what? Talk a little bit about how you managed that, how you survived that.
Man, no, good question. And so it's being honest is one of the things where I got worse. I got worse. And so a lot of times it's, especially when I know that life and the things I did in the streets, I'm not proud of. I still regret to this day. I still have sadness and sorrow for the things that I've done in my past life in the streets. And so imagine going into prison, all the stuff that you did in the streets, it does carry a reputation for you when you go in there, but not always, because again, it's a whole different culture now, and you got to work under somebody else's rules. And so when I walked in there, man, it was and seeing evil people, seeing people that were, just everybody's sizing each other up. This is, you're in a Shark Tank, right? And so and then people are seeing who's a minnow, who's who needs to get rid of, or who needs to be taken advantage of, or different things like that. So you're being sized up. And so when you get there, so you gotta find your place in the pecking order. You gotta find your place in the culture, in the system, right? And you gotta announce without announcing verbally that you're somebody to be respected, or you're somebody to be trusted, right? And if you can't be respected or trusted, it's not gonna go well for you, right? And so for me, I got worse. I was angry going into prison. I was angry, having friends that cooperated against me, and going into it, I was just angry, man. I was just upset, and so I got worse in prison, especially being part of my gang, and the violence that was a part of us, and it just got worse, and I felt like I needed to prove myself in there and different things like that, and represent my hood, represent my neighborhood that I come from, and so I feel like I got worse. But as I was in prison, and I was doing my time, with that anger, you get tired. I personally got tired of hating people. I got tired of hurting people. And I was like, I've hurt all these rival gang members. I've hurt all these other people. And I even hurt my friends, and they hurt me in court. And now I'm doing my time, and it's like, who do I hurt now? And it got to a point where I stopped looking at my reflection, if that makes any sense at all. I felt
With your
huge
own
shame.
reflection.
Huh?
You stopped looking at your own reflection?
Yeah, in the mirror. And it was the weirdest thing. I didn't realize I was doing that for a long time. When I would wash my hands, in my cell, there was this metal mirror, and it was attached to the wall, of course, but it was a little blurry because it was like metal. It was like it was, and I didn't want to see my reflection. I didn't, and I didn't realize that for the longest time. And then one day, I remember I'm working out, and I just like, hey, why don't I look at myself look at myself in the mirror, and I was just, I'm just gonna push myself to do it, and then I washed my hands after working out, and I don't know, it was hard to explain that when I did force myself to look at myself, I didn't like what I saw.
Mm.
It also brought memories of just how ashamed I was, because I hated gangs as a child, as I shared before, the things that happened to my family, and I became what I hated, and this the hatred inside of me was eating me alive. I couldn't see a reason to live, a reason to continue forward. I didn't want to hurt people no more, man, and so that was when I decided to take my life, to plan to take my life. And it's scary and it's sad how sometimes it just leads to that out of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere,
Mm-hmm. Like, talk us through what was in your mind at that point.
man. It was a dark place. It was a place where you feel that you're broken, that you're lost, that there's no changing the pain and the darkness that you have within.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it's one of those things where it's like, it's even said there's no time for weakness. And in the crime world or in the gang world, it's like there's no time for that. You actually fear weakness. You fear feeling emotion, and I think it just crept up on me. It got to me, and huge conviction over the things that I've done really, really affected me. And once you have huge conviction, man, like if you have no one you have nowhere to put it, to bear that burden that I carried was too heavy for me. And the things that I've seen, the things that I've done, and it's I think you get to a point where you do and you see things that humans should not be doing, out of hatred or to each other and different things. And you get to those points that you do those, and those memories are still there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can cloud them with alcohol, with drugs, with cocaine, with violence, with different things, with pleasure. And that stuff's all short-lived, because at the end of the day, it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I realized. And I just didn't want to hurt people no more. And that, honestly, that was my thing. I was tired of it, man. I was tired of hatred. I used to work in my favor to cover my fear as a child, and the trauma that I encountered as a kid. And so I hid under hatred and violence. But now this cancer, this cancer that I welcomed into my life to hide under, now it's killing me. Now it's eating me alive, and I'm feeling the effects. And I was just tired. I honestly was. I was just tired.
So, enter Jesus. When did Jesus come into the picture?
And so when I planned to take my life, again, nobody knew. I would give signs to my wife, that not that I was going to take my life, but that my life could be taken. And yeah, I felt numb. It's the weirdest thing, man. Like, when somebody is feeling that defeated, that they're, I'm just going to take my life, I honestly felt numb.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even this euphoria like in your mind, where all of a sudden you start to say, I'm ready to go, and you all of a sudden you go about your day. Nobody knows what's being planned, and you're smiling, you're laughing, you're playing, you're doing all these things, but they don't know that you're about to take your life. And that was my thing. Not everybody cries out for help. Some people they just plan things out as normal, as a normal day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my thing. And I remember the day that I was going to take my life, before I went out to the rec yard, I had this razor blade, we weren't supposed to have it, but I had one, and but by this time it was like rusty. It was a rusty blade, and I set it on top of my locker, and I went out to go work out. I was planning on taking my life that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember working out and and then coming back from my workout, and I got my clothes ready to go take a shower. I'm in the shower, and it was weird, man. It felt like honestly, to tell you, like it felt like I was in a trance, if that
Okay.
makes any sense at all. And so when I was in my shower, I had like a moment of like to snap out of it, if that makes any sense. And then when I snapped out of it, I just started to cry. And because at first it felt euphoric, it felt like, that's just what I'm gonna do. It is what it is. I wasn't doubt. I wasn't like afraid. Do I do it? Do I not? I was like, it's gonna happen. And but in this moment in the shower, I just like I had a moment to snap out of it, and I just started crying. And I remember crying and crying in the shower, and I just started talking to God. I just
Mm.
started praying, and I'm like, God, I'm so sorry. And this was honestly the realest prayer I had ever given in my life, the most authentic. And I remember just crying and crying and crying and just remembering all the things that I did, and just saying sorry to God for them, and just and just even telling God that I'm sorry, I'm sorry for what I've done. I regret it, and I just want you. And I remember just talking to God, acting like I felt this big void in my heart. I felt this big emptiness. I felt this darkness in me. And I was just like, I remember saying this, and this is like the exact words. I remember saying, God, I don't even want you to free me. I don't even want you to let me out. I was like, I will do 10 more years in prison. I don't care. I will do even 10 more years in prison if you just come into my life and just fill my void, fill within me, the emptiness. And I remember just begging and begging and begging, and I was just crying and praying because I knew that I was going to take my life going into my cell. And I remember just saying, please, just please, please, please. And I was just praying. And I remember at the end of that prayer, I was like, God, I don't feel any different. Literally is what I said. And I was like, I literally thought nothing happened in that prayer, but everything happened. But I didn't know that at the time because I don't know much about the faith. And so I remember praying, and I'm just like, Lord, I don't feel any different. I was like, but I still love you. I'm so sorry for what I've done. I'm sorry for what I might do, and I still love you, and I still believe in you, and I'm thankful for the things that you've done in my life. And I'm so sorry. And I remember I just cried even more. I stopped talking to God in that moment. I was just trying to clear my eyes so it didn't look like I was crying. Because again, everybody in prison says that you don't cry. Nobody cries in prison, but everybody cries in prison. And and so I stayed there for a while, man. And I remember just feeling defeated. And I remember walking to my cell. Again, there was no warfare in my mind of between I'm gonna do this or not. It was just feeling defeated, and I'm gonna go do it.
Yeah.
And I remember walking to my cell, and I remember as I closed the prayer, I was like, I'm sorry for what I might do. And so as I walked into the cell, I just started changing and my clothes and stuff. And I remember I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, the only way I could describe this was that like as if a mint started to melt around my heart.
Mm.
It just felt like something covering me, and I'm gonna get to why it felt like that. It's so alien to me, and the way it felt like no alcohol, no drug, no pleasure that I've ever felt in my life could feel the way that felt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, and that's the thing about God, that again I didn't know in that moment, but as alien as the feeling felt, I knew it was God. There was no doubt of anything. It was like God is so supernatural in that aspect. It's just I knew it was God. And the crazy thing about that weird feeling I was feeling that felt amazing was love. I
Mm.
never knew what love felt. And my father was a woman beater. And he never told me he loved me. I never experienced true love. And I ran around my life, impregnating my girlfriend and having, these kids, but I didn't know love. Yeah, I didn't know how to treat her with love. And so I'm calling things love, but I love you, I love that. But I don't know what it means because I've never experienced it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so in that prison cell, I felt the best feeling in my life, and I felt God's love in my life. And I remember it was so powerful that I started just to cry. And the only words that I could think in my head, I was speechless. The only words was, why me? Why me? Why me? And I remember I was just crying and crying. And I was just like, why me? I'm too broken. I'm too, separated from you. I'm too dirty. I'm too gone for you, like, why me? And the only words that I heard within me was just, my children, take care of my children.
Mm.
And I started to cry because it was like, even though I didn't grow up in the Christian church, it was like as if I knew that one day I would become a pastor. And this love that I felt in my life in that moment, I gave my life to Jesus in that cell,
Wow.
and that love, that has not left me till today. And at times, of course, I get dry. I start getting lukewarm and different things, right? But it's not him that leaves us; it's us that stray at times, right?
Yeah.
But in that moment, I found fulfillment. I encountered what true love is, and it was worth dying for. It was worth living for, and my life changed there, man. I wasn't perfect, of course not, and I still not. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember just giving my life to him, and it was just the best feeling. I wish even today, I wish that others could feel what I feel,
Mm-hmm.
to experience what I experienced, to get, and that he took that burden from me. And so I gave my life to Jesus, and yeah, so that was just the
So after
amazing.
that, everything was easy, right? Everything was easy until how much time did you serve after that?
I think I was over halfway through my prison sentence. I was already in the, downhill from there on the way home.
Okay.
And yeah, man, when you think that's the thing about prison life and the gang life, man. Like, you can't just join a gang, right? And expect everybody to say, "Oh, you're a Christian now." Like, "Oh, okay. Well, hey, good luck to you, buddy." And they'll shake your hand, right? And like, "Oh, pleasure doing business with you." Don't tell nobody what you know about us and what we did. Don't tell our secrets, right? Hell
Yeah.
no, it don't work that way, man. And so that's movie stuff, like I accept Jesus, and then the credits start coming, right? Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ending,
Yeah.
right? Beautiful emotional song, and then the credits come, and then
Yeah.
does real life don't work that way, man. And sometimes I even feel like that when we baptize people, like if we don't share the gospel truly to people, man, we just like, hey, you're baptized as Jesus, and they're excited, and they're ready to storm the gates of hell, right? Take on the devil, and then weeks later you see life hit them. It's just, and so
Sometimes it's like right away. I tell people, it's like sometimes when I pat you on the back in the baptistry, I feel like I put a target on your back,
yeah,
because
literally.
in the parking lot of the church, it's going to hit you.
I've even told some, man, that I was really close to, that I was seeing to faith, and I had the honor of baptizing. I would tell them, I was like, get ready, man, because you're about to get hit hard. And it's sure enough the warfare.
Yeah.
But yeah, so man, so being a Christian, bro, like it's not like I advertise it, right? It's not that you advertise it at all. You keep that to yourself, man. And I started reading the Word of God, and I had this KJV Bible that was already myself. I just started reading it, and it was crazy how clear the scriptures would be to me, and how I understand them. And then but the problem is that I still acted like a gangster. I still walked like one. I still played one like one, and but this is where I got a crash course in spiritual warfare. The same thing, when we talk about, the other people we were just laughing at, and it was like the spiritual warfare. It is real, and they were feeling it. Some of them were feeling it. They were seeing it, man. And when that happens, they start to test you.
Okay.
They start to test you, and with different things here and there, and you pretend to try to make it past that, and they just start to test you, man. And you have to learn, man, how to stand your ground spiritually. It doesn't mean doing things physically anymore like my old ways, but now you have to stand spiritually, and it got difficult.
Is there anybody who made a positive impact on your life in there that, yeah, I just think about, I know people did, but anybody in
Yeah.
particular, especially in light of the fact that maybe helped you in the path to becoming a pastor or teaching you a valuable life lesson or what?
Yeah, like thank you for asking that question. Yeah, so there was there was this brother in there that I still am in connection with and in conversation with, and even some of the other people. But even when there was a target on my back, right? And you see people again, like you see people, man, they know that something's changing you, and so they're testing you. And so I had this brother who became as a mentor to me, to my life. And I remember I had these three brothers that became, they were OGs in the gang world, in the crime world, and they were very well connected as well. And so they became like mentors. They became mentors in my life. And I remember that even a lot of the inmates would get jealous because of that. And I remember it started as a joke. They'd say, "Hey, where's your dad? Where's your dad?" To one of them, "Where's your dad? Where's your dad?" Right? And I would get so pissed, man. I would get so upset. But that was a way that God was providing somebody in my life to protect me and to guide me and to redirect me and to lead me out into the what He was preparing me for in the street, in the world. And so we made it a joke. We're like, all right, that they want to, me and this guy had talked, and in his cell, and he was just like, you know what, don't care what they say, man. If they say I'm your dad, I'm your dad. Who cares, bro? But if they got a problem, they can come to me, and they ain't gonna come to me. And trust me, they didn't talk, they didn't tell nothing, they didn't say nothing to him because they were afraid of him. This guy ran the yard for us, right? And so that was the thing, man, that they did that. And so I was like, yeah, that's my dad. So what? Right. And then at times he would piss them off. And a lot of times he started doing this. He was like, hey, where's my son? Do you guys know where my son is? And, and just like adding fuel to the fire, man. So God put these people in my life, man. And to even correct me when I was trying to act like a bad boy, even, and I wasn't doing crime anymore, nothing like that. But when I was trying to act hard still, right. And God would use him to like, hey, you're going home. You know, God's blessing you. You got something. God's got something with you. Remember, go home. This isn't for you, because things can change that fast. And so in that, man, I got my GED. I had dropped out of high school before in my senior year because I had done a crime, something horrible, and I left the state for some time. And so I literally dropped out my senior year, man. And so I got my GED in there, and I also went for my associate's degree in psychology. And so I was doing that, and I was dead set on following the Lord. And like I told you, these mentors in my life, they protected me every step of the way. They walked with me every step of the way. They gave me advice every step of the way, even when I was acting like a knucklehead. And the last day that I was going to be released, even this main one, like the one that everybody was like, oh, your dad, and stuff like that. He stayed with me in my cell for most of the day, because you could feel the hatred and the tension. And we even knew that there was one in my crew we believed that wanted to hurt me on my last day. And that was a hater move. But that's some other type of politics that we can't get into. But he stayed with me in my cell. He stayed with me. We talked, and we had a great time. And then he got emotional the day that I was getting released, and I was sad too, because they really meant something to me, in my life, and they still do. And I still call them, and I'll stay, and it's amazing. And so God used them in my life. And then as I was getting released from prison, I was going back to my old hood. But even as I was going back to my old neighborhood, my mind was made up that I was going to represent Jesus to the fullest. And so when I got out of prison, going back to my old hood, I started reaching out to some of my old gang and just letting them know. But I put it out there. I'm done. I had sent some letters beforehand, some coded letters, but even coming out, I told them I was done. This is over. And it was funny, because when I ran into one of them, he was like, hey man, he's like, you're cool, bro. Like, you're good, man. Like, that wears off after 6 months. Like if they experienced it before, right? And I was like, nah, like, I'm serious, man. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm repping Jesus, man. And they were like, yeah. That wears off about 6 months, man. And it's been past 6 months since then. And so thank God, glory to God. And so,
Yeah.
So I was in my old hood, and I think they were happy too that I was done, because there was a new pecking order, there was a new leadership, there was new everything, and they didn't have to worry about being challenged.
Hmm.
And so I'm done, man. And so I came out. I joined a church. It was a church plant that hadn't even launched yet. They were in the pre-launch phase, and they were supposed to be a multicultural, bilingual church, and it was all white. And so their mission was to be a multicultural, bilingual church, and so it was all white people, but the lead pastor was a Hispanic guy, and he was married to a white lady, and so they were a biracial couple, and so his English was weak. It was horrible. His Spanish was great because that was his first language, and her language, she could speak both languages fluently.
Uh-huh.
And so I started going to this church with my family, and I thought that I couldn't relate to any of these people. A lot of these white people there at the church were upper class, people,
Hmm.
but the amazing thing is that God knew what He was doing, and God knew that God was paving the way. This is amazing, and God used these people that I thought I had nothing in common with,
Hmm.
only to find out that we had all we needed was Jesus in common and God's love in common,
Hmm.
and these people discipled us, they mentored us, and so they invited me to their houses for dinner, and through them, through their prayers, through their support, through their mentoring, man, through their love, and they listened to our testimonies, they cried with us, they prayed with us, they walked with us, they fought for us, through them I learned how to treat my who is now my wife, right, who was my girlfriend, and before, and the mother of my children. I learned through them how to treat my wife, how to treat my children, what does it mean to actually have a household of love,
Yeah.
and so that's what I learned through them, and being mentored through them and discipled.
So as you think about the Apostle Paul, I was thinking about the Apostle Paul while you were talking, and his experience being in chains and being in prison. Um, do you find yourself drawn to, like, is there anything from the Apostle Paul you're like, oh my goodness, like if people understood why he's saying that, because I understand why he's saying that,
Yeah.
because I've been in chains, I know what it feels like. Do you feel an affinity with the Apostle Paul? And yeah, talk a little bit
Oh
about that.
yeah. Let's say it that strongly. I really do. And so the reason what I love about Paul is that Paul was high in society before Jesus, right? And he was this hot shot coming out of, we'll say in today's way, he was coming out of seminary, right? And
Yeah.
so he had the best rabbis, the best everything. And so he's this hot shot coming out, and his mission is to take out these foolish Christians, right? And so he's there persecuting. He's there at the stoning of Stephen. So he's
Yeah.
there persecuting Christians, killing them, right? And and so he's at the top of the pack. He's the top of the chain, man. He's doing amazing. But through that, what happens to him, and how God even uses an old man to restore his sight, right? And this blind man didn't even want. I mean, this old man didn't even want to do it because everybody knew Saul at the time. That was his name, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with me, what I resonate with him is that the pride comes before the fall, and
Mm,
what I resonate is the fall, and then how when he came back through being an apostle now, and you still see his suffering, you still see the chains, you still see all that, but now that stuff is physical, but it's not spiritual no more, and how he always speaks through humbleness, and that's what I resonate with Paul in the aspect where he keeps telling the church, reminding the church about God's love,
hmm.
right? Like don't go back into legalism, don't go back to all these things. And he's like, you foolish Galatians, and and he's correcting the people even when they start getting drunk with the spiritual gifts and fighting and getting prideful with all that stuff. He's correcting all these churches even while he's leading, and he's speaking from the humbleness aspect of where God has him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even people challenging him. You see the church backbiting on him well, you're not as good as Apollos, right? You're not good as Peter. We follow this, and man, he dealt with so much crap in the Christian church more than in the Jewish culture, and so I resonate with that.
Yeah.
And even being here in Florida and planting and doing ministry is reminding the people, like, yo, you don't have to get lost in the legalism and and different things. And so that's what I resonate with. I'm not here for leadership. I'm not here to make myself something grand or anything, but I just want to serve God's kingdom. And that's what I resonated with him. And so I think he was the biggest gangster for Jesus in the New Testament, man. He was ready to go. He wasn't afraid of it,
Yeah, he wasn't. He wasn't. What memory from your chains is helping you as a pastor right now? Because Paul talks about, remember my chains, as he's asking for prayer, as you remember your chains, what was it what was it about the chains that has really prepared you for ministry?
Is honestly for me, I like when God is a redeemer, right?
Yeah.
He's a restorer, and only God can turn your darkest moment in your life and make it a place that you want to revisit for the rest of your life. That my time in my cell where I wanted to cut my veins and with this rusty blade, that's some scary stuff. That's some graphic stuff, man.
Yeah.
But it's the time that I encountered God. Is the time that I fell in love with God, and that he loved me before I loved him, that he, and I'm trying not to get emotional right now, man, but I revisit that moment often. And it doesn't look graphic to me. It doesn't look scary or anything to me. Now I even get children. I'm just talking about it. I just feeling that love, man. I revisit that moment. And that gives me fuel in ministry, even when I suffer, even when things happen in my life or one gets attacked. I want people to feel what I feel.
Yep.
And I want people that, even in the darkest moment of their lives, that there's still hope, and hope is alive. His grave is empty for a reason. Yeah, man. And so just that aspect of just if they could experience and encounter the one that I've encountered, and now, and so that gives me fuel. So my darkest moment in my life, my darkest night, is the greatest time that I revisit repeatedly, and even reminds me to humble myself at times and to slow down and to trust in him more. Yeah,
it's all good, man. People say there's no crying in podcasts, but everybody cries in podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay, so what started you on the path to being a church planter?
Yeah, so with that, it was just, as I was growing in the church, I went through seminary, the same church that I was discipled through, they supported me all the way through, man. They cheered me on all the way through. I went through seminary, through pastoral training, and as I was ordained as a pastor, I was working under my pastor for years and being mentored by him. And then he always told me that the time's going to come where you're going to take my place. And then from there, I ended up pastoring that church. I was blessed and welcomed into pastoring that church. And that was amazing. And so I pastored it, but I always told him, because I always prayed, and I knew that God was calling me to something more, to church planting. And so it was weird, because I told him that you have me for 2 years. That's what I would feel. And so okay. I ended up being there for 3 years, 2 years officially, and 1 year unofficially, where he mentored me. And I was there, still pastoring the church, but he was observing. And so there was a process going through there. So I was there for 3 years. And as I pastored that church, I wrestled with God, and because I was scared to go. I knew God was calling me out of that denomination. And then from there, I went through church planting trainings as well. I was always going to conferences through these different trainings and stuff that they had me going through. And my denomination that I used to be a part of, they some people would call me the golden boy of it, because they had plans for my life and different things like that. They loved me, they welcomed me, but I knew that God was calling me out. There was also some theological differences that I had with that Reformed denomination that I used to be a part of, And I remember a friend invited me to the last NACC, and so he was part of the restoration movement, and so he invited me to it. And when I went there, I remember because I'm in West Michigan, and so I'm driving to the last NACC, which is in Indianapolis, and that week I wasn't going to go to the NACC at all because we had a vacation Bible school at our church.
Mm-hmm.
And our church was doing so good that year, man, and it was amazing. And so our VBS is packed. It's going great. And so I'm over here finally crying to my wife. I'm because I'm surrendering to God calling me out, right? I finally surrender and I say, okay, I haven't announced it to anybody, only me, my wife, and God know, right? But I'm feeling this call to plant. And so on the whole way there to NACC, I'm crying, man. I'm crying like a baby. I'm crying the way to Indianapolis. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is that I'm going to NACC. I have these plans to go to these workshops, but I'm crying because I'm scared out of my mind because all I know Christian-wise is this denomination, and I'm stepping out. And I didn't know I was stepping into the restoration movement at the time. I just knew that I was going into something different. Didn't know where. So there was no plans. And so I go to NACC and I'm sad, I'm scared. And so instead of going to my workshops, I didn't go to any of my workshops. I just mope around, walking around the different ministry booths, So I'm walking around. I got this backpack. I'm buying some things there. And I keep texting my wife here and there, how's it going? And they're like, dude, we don't need you. You're fine. It's stay over there, right?
Yeah.
And then that's when I meet Ken Idleman. And so I meet Ken Idleman and we start talking and he asked me about a tattoo I have here, and I remember I showed it to him and we start talking about my testimony, my quick version of my testimony. I've told this so many times that I have a 2-minute version. I have a 1-minute version, and I have the bigger versions, right? And
so why are we talking for an hour and a half, dude? You could have told me this in 2 minutes.
Because I usually don't get this, man. I usually get the 15-minute, 10-minute version, right? And then they'll tell me, give us your testimony, and then you have 2 minutes for your church plan.
There you go.
And so no, but So man, like that was amazing. That was an amazing opportunity, and he spoke a lot of wisdom into my life that moment. He introduced me to a lot of great people, and God just did the rest there, man. And through connecting there with people, I ended up connecting with Nexus Church Partners, and even FCP Florida Church Partners, and it was amazing support. And I loved how many of these brothers in the restoration movement welcomed me in. But before they did that, they also assessed me. They checked where I was, how I aligned theologically, and it was this perfect marriage, man. Because it was like I never heard of the restoration movement before. They must have skipped that in school or anything. But regardless, it was crazy how identical we were, man.
Yeah.
And so it was perfect. This was for sure God paving the way. And so we prayed and we knew that God was calling us to Florida, to Central Florida, to plant Encounter Christian Church. That was the church that we're here to plant, and the rest was history, man. Just praying, fundraising, and just praying for the way and just seeing God provide, and we're really excited to be here in Central Florida, planting this church.
Dude, you planted it like as we record this. It was the week after Easter, week before Easter.
Yeah, week after Easter. I did it the lowest Sunday of attendance, man. And so I did that on purpose. And so and it was really low attendance. But it was amazing. It was higher than the previous Sunday. So it was awesome, man. And so that's what has me excited. To work in church planting and to reach the unreached and the de-churched, because to me it's not even just about Encounter Christian Church. It's just about doing ministry, period. So we're really excited to just, I feel free even being out of that denomination, which I love and I honor and I respect, but I am restoration movement through and through, and that's the amazing part of that. And so my heart is to just prepare and build up more leaders and plant more churches. And so, and to do ministry, man, to expand God's kingdom. And so that's really what honestly has me excited right now.
Dude, okay, you got to tell a story about your dad.
Yes, my dad. And so,
Yeah, because last time you mentioned his name, you said wife beater.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. And yeah, and you meet my dad today, man. Oh my gosh, I love that, man. And so, um, man, my dad for years rejected the faith.
Okay.
He was not angry. He was not mean to us because he did mellow out. He didn't beat my mother anymore. As I got older, because things changed. You know, that's not gonna happen no more, right? And so, but because we weren't gonna allow that, but um we had this, man, this is the cool thing, that one of those upper class white people, right, that were part of our church, right, and I say this for a reason, because a lot of times there's a reason why I say it so strongly, and it's not to offend anybody, but that's honestly because sometimes we can say there's no way I can connect to this person, there's no way I can reach this person. There's always a way, man. With God, there's always a way.
Yep.
And so with this guy, my dad's English is not very good, and this guy's Spanish is non-existent.
Okay.
Right. And so this upper class white dude that had nothing in common with my dad and vice versa made it his mission almost every single Sunday to tell my dad that he loved him and that God loves him.
Oh, wow.
Right. And my dad rejected it for years. My dad was polite always and all that stuff, but my dad rejected it for years. And finally, man, God's love penetrated my dad's heart. The last year of me pastoring my church in West Michigan, and I remember I got a call from my sister, right? And my sister is crying. She is crying. I thought somebody died, because she's like, your dad, and she's crying. She's all emotional. I'm like, dude, just tell me what the heck happened, right? And she's a mess, right? I don't know if my sister remembers this, but she was a mess, man. And she finally tells me, your dad wants to get baptized. And I was like, oh, sheesh. And then I was like, wait, what? and so my sister and her husband lead my father to Christ. They just have this conversation. My father is just ready to surrender his life to Jesus. And this is an amazing moment, man. And so I had the honor, my last year of pastoring this church, I had the honor of baptizing my father, which was super amazing. And it was crazy, man, because after baptizing my father, which was a huge moment in my life and in his life, of course, it's funny how you get so religious that time that you start to speak Christianese, you start to do all these things, right? And so all of a sudden my dad gets baptized, and all of a sudden he wants to hug me. He calls me, and he's so awkward on the phone. There's this long awkward silences, and because me and him are just not used to this, right? Yeah. And so it was cringy, man. And but I realized through him trying to hug me, I realized that I really still had some built up animosity in there that I didn't know was deep inside. And that I had to get out of there, that I had to surrender to God to get it out of me. And man, my father calls me now, and he tells me he loves me. He talks to me often, and it's a whole different man. If you met my father now, you would not believe like this testimony at all. You would not believe any of it, man, because he is the sweetest, most amazing guy. But that just speaks to the power of God.
Yeah.
That's just to speak to the power, but that also speaks to, again, this one guy, this elder at a church that did not give up, did not say, oh, I can't speak Spanish. So no, he asked me to translate for him often. He asked other people to translate for him at our church. And that was the type of discipleship we saw. You know, and at our church, we even saw other women that would invite these families that couldn't speak any English and they couldn't speak any Spanish, and they would invite them to their houses for dinner. And you saw this discipleship happening and this relationships building that still exists to this day. And so imagine that, man. And so a lot of times we come up with excuses why we can't. That's why I spoke that strongly about that guy. That guy is an amazing man of God, and I love him to this day. And so does my father. But I know about how many excuses we come up why we can't reach people.
Yep.
So
it's powerful, dude. All right. So I like to ask this question to end with. All right. So what's something that's bringing joy to your journey right now today as we sit here and have this conversation?
Man, you could always talk about the discouragement, always, right? And so, but the thing about discouragement, the thing about joy is that joy is often you can't get what you don't have.
Hmm.
And if you're not having that relationship, that
You
time
got to
with
preach
God,
that, man. That's awesome.
yeah. And so you can't get what you don't have, man.
Yeah.
You can't be running in ministry with on empty, right? With the alarm going off, right? You know, low fuel, low fuel, low fuel. A
Hmm.
lot of the times we do that, man. But that's the thing about ministry and even life. There's always reasons to be discouraged. There's always reasons to give up. There's all these things that always happen in our lives. Even going through a pandemic, you know how hard it is for businesses and even for ministry and all these different things and even to launch a church in the pandemic.
Who
That's
would do that?
crazy. You're crazy for that.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that you truly have to find joy, you know, that peace, man, that peace of God, that joy of God, that love of God, that supersedes all understanding, you know what I mean, that transcends all of that stuff. And so my joy, my love, my peace is not affected by my outward circumstances, by my inward circumstances and that's my encounter with God. That's my time with God. and
Mhm.
and so honestly, that's what's bringing joy to me, is getting on my knees more now, and knowing that I was empty for a little bit and I needed to refuel.
Mhm.
And right now, the refuel is bringing my joy into my life. It's improving my marriage. It's improving my relationship with my children and even with people around me. And so, honestly, that's what brings joy, because even when things get difficult, you know, I have a special needs daughter,
Mhm.
and when things get difficult, you know, when she's had over 30 surgeries to this day,
Oh, wow.
you know. And so even in the darkest of nights, in the darkest of times, or even if your church is no longer active or alive, or you're somewhere else, the ministry continues, the joy continues, even through the storms, even through the circumstances.
Yep. Good word, man. Good word. Hey, it's an honor to talk to you. It's an honor to call you my friend. Thank you so much for making time to talk to me.
No, thank you for everything, brother. I really appreciate it.
All right. God bless you.
God bless you, man.